Where's there it is. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Outer North East Community Committee. My name is Councillor Norma Harrington, and I'll be chairing today's meeting. The Outer North East Community Committee covers the Alwoodley, Harewood and Wetherby wards, and is a committee where ward councillors have an opportunity to discuss and make decisions about services and priorities for the local area, and also consider funding applications for local community projects and youth activities. Could I now invite members and officers to introduce themselves, and I'll start with Councillor Neil Buckley.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Neil Buckley, Alwoodley ward.
Councillor Cohen.
Good evening, everybody. Councillor Dan Cohen from the Alwoodley ward, looking for where the camera is. It's up there.
Councillor Harrand.
Peter Harrand, Alwoodley ward.
Councillor Robinson.
Councillor Matthew Robinson from the Harewood ward.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Yep, Ryan Olser from the Harewood ward.
And Councillor.
Has the alphabet changed?
Councillor Lamb from Wetherby ward.
Just to keep you awake, Councillor. Okay, so the officers that are with us this evening, Chad Newton.
Thank you, Chair. Chad Newton, Sustainable Energy and Air Quality Team, Leeds City Council.
Thank you, Chad. And then Jeremy Lunn.
Yeah, Jeremy Lunn from Highways and Transportation.
Alison.
Alison Sustakovsky in the Safer Stronger Communities team. I'm the locality programme manager in place of Liz Jarman.
Preet.
Preet Kundi, Localities Officer for Outer North East.
And last but not least, John.
Good evening, John Grieve, Governance Services, and I'll be clerking today's meeting.
So moving to agenda item number 1, the clerk.
Thank you, Chair. Under agenda item 1, there are no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. Under item 2, there were no items which require the exclusion of the press or public. Under agenda item 3, late items of business. There are no formal late applications, but we do have supplementary information in respect of the Community Committee's finance report, item number 11, and that's been circulated in front of you. It's an additional wellbeing application.
Thank you.
Agenda item 4, Chair, apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Sam Firth and Councillor Linda Richards. Agenda item 5, could I ask members to declare any interest they may have? I'll assume that's none. Item number 6, Chair, that's the open forum. There are 2 submissions in respect of the open forum. Both submissions relate to the climate emergency update report. We have 2 questions. Are members happy to deal with these questions during discussion of this item? Thank you, Chair.
So item number 7 is minutes of the previous meeting held on the 13th of September. Could these minutes be accepted as a correct record? Seeing nods all around, so thank you for that. Any matters arising from the minutes? Take it that's a no as well. Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 9, the climate. Sorry, go on.
There was an matter. I was searching through my papers looking for the matter arising. The last meeting we were told about the digital health clubs that the library service were running in different libraries across the city. I think we were asking for more information on that. I can't recall if that information came through.
Not that I'm aware of. Preet, you haven't, I don't think. So can you chase that up then, please? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. So agenda item number 9 is the climate emergency update. And could I invite Chad to present the item, please?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. Thank you very much for having us today. I would just share my screen. I've got a presentation. You all have paper copies of this. Please be advised that I will not run through every slide in detail. I will I can see some applause for that. I will, however, stress the first 7 slides, which are about the kind of key things that you need to know in terms of activity taking place in the outer northeast area, and the opportunities for the area as well. And then for the benefit of those watching at home, I will briefly go over the rest of the slides, which provides an overview of the work that is going on across the city. So I'll just share my screen now. So just to introduce myself, first of all, I am Chad Newton, Senior Communications Officer for the Sustainable Energy and Air Quality team. And for those who aren't aware, that's a team led by Polly Cook, which is responsible for kind of coordinating the climate's action, for the council's action on the climate emergency. We also administrate and deliver projects ourselves as well. In terms of the key activities taking place in your area, what you can see on this slide here are the key things that we really want to highlight today. So members, you may be aware of the public sector decarbonisation scheme. So this is a series of projects across the city and across the district to install decarbonisation measures across public buildings using government funding. And I'm pleased to say that the buildings identified, so Bardsley Primary School, Wetherby St James and Wetherby Leisure Centre, have benefited from that scheme. And either work is underway now or will be finished by the end of March. Another major scheme that my colleagues are running at the moment is a programme to install energy efficiency measures and solar panels in low-income households across the city. And this is an opportunity for any resident in your area who has an income of less than £30,000 and lives in a suitable property. So at the moment, I think you will have received an all-member email recently, but we're really keen to promote this to make sure that we maximise the use of this funding across the city. Carbon emissions from the way we heat and power our buildings represent around half of the city's carbon footprint, according to the Leeds Climate Commission, and about a quarter of the city's carbon footprint is from residential buildings. So you can see why the work that we're doing to decarbonise public buildings and residential buildings is so important. In terms of the free solar and insulation offer, there is also an opportunity for private landlords if they have a building with low-income tenants. And they can also benefit from the scheme. However, for them, it is heavily subsidised rather than free, so they are expected to make a contribution. And finally, the other major programme that we are running at the moment that is benefiting some of your own residents is the electric vehicle trial scheme. So to help the city switch to electric vehicles and to help businesses in particular switch to electric vehicles, since the start of January in 2020, my colleagues have been running a scheme which gives a free electric vehicle trial to any business, charity or other organisation for up to 2 months. And it's been a very popular scheme so far. And I'm delighted to say that organisations in your wards have taken part, including the Harewood Estate, who have told us that they are since moving to some electric vehicles as well. And that's a common theme. Around half of the participating organisations have said that they're now either switching themselves already or are considering to switch to. So this slide details some of the key things that we want to get across that is probably most relevant to your area. When we are looking at the carbon footprint of Leeds as a whole, there is kind of no one size fits all model. So the chart that you can see on the screen at the moment is kind of a scoring system, which is all in the public domain already. And you can see actually that some of the communities in your area have a higher than average carbon
Chad,
footprint.
could I just stop you for a moment? Councillor Lamb's asking something.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask why a large proportion of our area is missing.
I think that might be to do with the cropping, but if there is a link on the
It's the
slide.
same on here
Oh, okay.
and on the next page.
Okay, I'm not sure why that's the case, but I can. There's a link on that slide, so that you can zoom out and zoom in, so I can share that with you. And with the other slide, I can also send that following the
It's
meeting.
kind of a basic thing if you're going to come to our area to sort of have a map that shows us our area.
Okay, I apologise for that, Councillor.
Thank you, Chad.
So as mentioned, some of the communities in this area have a slightly higher than average, and that is likely due to an increased electricity consumption or increased usage of travel from private vehicles when you look at the data. So I think that underscores the importance of energy efficiency measures and helping people switch to cleaner vehicles. I've also been asked to provide a brief update on air quality across the city, because that is another area that this team, the Sustainable Energy and Air Quality team, work on. You are probably aware that the council passed a new air quality strategy earlier this year, following the decision to discontinue plans to introduce clean air zone. The new air quality strategy has a broader scope and more ambitious targets to reduce air pollution to World Health Organization guidelines by 2030, and includes an action plan with actions to tackle pollution from transport, but also from homes, industry and agriculture, and also to work with the health and care sector to protect those most vulnerable. There is limited.
Excuse me, Norman, can I just, this map says that all the inner cities are the best. The dark blue areas, Hare Hill, there's Little London there, a dark blue, which on the left hand side is best, West 1%. And our area, which is the darker red, is worst. Now, that's not quite what I had expected, really. Carbon emissions are worse in Harewood than they are in Hare Hill.
So this is per person. So I think it's probably, it may be different to what you expect, because people in the inner city areas probably are less likely to use cars and probably have smaller homes, rather than those that live in the outer areas, which have a higher carbon footprint in general. Does that make sense, Councillor?
Councillor.
Does it not mean the total carbon emissions then? We got a map, a plan that says that. Dividing it by this number of people doesn't seem to be terribly useful.
So this is just one tool. This is a map to show the annual carbon footprint per person. So it's just a tool that can be used for engagement. So this isn't the emissions from the ward necessarily. It's from the people in the ward or from these LSOA areas.
Stevenson, you've got a question.
Yeah, Councillor Harron beat me to that. Is this per capita, or is this just you're saying that of the number of people that live in that area, you've divided the carbon emissions between them? So, i.e., in the same geographic area, if there are 100 people living there, they'd have a lower footprint than an area that has 2. And if the answer to that is yes, then I'd suggest that the rest of this presentation is a bit moot, Chair, and we'd probably ask them to go away and come back when they've got all the relevant information.
So this isn't, I should clarify, this isn't council data. This is information in the public domain, which has been extracted from a range of sources. And it isn't purporting to represent the area's emissions, but the emissions of the people in that area. People, for example, may travel to different parts of the city and therefore, burning emissions from a different area. But this is about individual carbon footprints. So when we're communicating some of the changes that are required from individual residents, this is a helpful tool with that. It's not to shame particular areas. It's just to highlight that a one-size-fits-all approach won't work, and also underscore the need for energy efficiency measures and help switching to zero-emission vehicles.
I take that point, Chair, but you're presenting to us some information. So as the presenter, I ask you, can you tell us how that data is calculated? What's the methodology that calculates
that data that you're presenting to us?
So as I've mentioned, this isn't council data. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Chad, I think several councillors have made the point already. And I do think that when we had the chair's brief, that I said we need to be specific about the outer northeast area and not to concentrate on citywide issues. So I think that the presentation as it is at the moment is not particularly relevant and particularly helpful. So it might be worth you moving on to another section of the presentation, which is more in tune with what's actually happening in the outer northeast. I've got Councillor Buckley and then Councillor Cohen.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It was just to make the point, or ask the question actually, on the similar theme. Given that the presentation of the map says that the further out you go, the worse you are in terms of carbon emissions, and the further in you go, the better it gets in terms of carbon emissions, this presentation would lend itself to justifying the imposition of a carbon zone, wouldn't it?
But can you define what you mean by carbon zone, please, Councillor?
Instead of a clean air zone, a low carbon zone. So in other words, if you were coming into the city and crossing, let's say, the ring road, you would then be hit with a carbon charge.
That wouldn't be an area, so I don't work in highways or transport, so that wouldn't be an area that I would comment on. Yeah, I don't have any further comment on that, I'm afraid.
Councillor Cohen, you had a question.
It's more of a comment, Chair, actually. You know, I look at this map and essentially all the outer areas of the city are more significant carbon producers, according to this. And of course, you look at those areas and they are by and large the areas worst served by public transport, areas where you cannot but use a car. And if ever there was an argument that we needed vastly improved public transport links across the outer areas, so we can travel around from one part of the outer area to another without this need to constantly travel into the centre. And if this map has only one use, and I think this may be it, that could be it.
Robinson.
I'm going to help you out, Chad. Going to help you out. So, yeah, obviously the map's there. It's not your map. It's not your data. I've had a little look at some of the data, interest in the flight data, which is used to look at the average household income apportioned out by the emissions for each LOSA, which is fairly arbitrary, and that's just flights. But as Councillor Cohen said, if we're looking at this in terms of the debate around public transport, absolutely, we do need to consider that. And I'm hoping that you're going to go on to say something about that. Similarly, I looked at the LOSA for Thornham and Scarcroft, which seems to be the worst, the deepest red on this list. What support is available from the council to help that area that's the worst in terms of carbon emission to help improve that position? What's been put in place for them?
So it's like, so as I try not to spend too much time on this slide because I'm cognizant of the chair's comments, but it's, as you've correctly commented, it's likely that the reason some of the areas are darker red is primarily because of emissions from homes and from travel. And so anything that we can do to make public transport more accessible and more attractive would help. And anything that we can do to reduce the energy efficiency of homes and buildings would help. The main scheme at the moment to help people reduce the energy efficiency of their buildings is the solar panel and insulation scheme that I mentioned before. Now that is targeted at low-income homeowners.
Sorry, Chair, I'm sorry, we said the word reduce the energy efficiency. Do you mean improve the energy?
Reduce energy consumption. I do apologise. Sorry.
You really threw me, and I was conscious that people will be watching this equally thrown. Sorry for the interruption.
So on that basis, Chad, because I'm pleased to hear you say that, what monies from this scheme is being ring fenced for the worst emitting areas? So if you are a council home tenant living in Thorner at the moment, what is the council doing in terms of outreach to make sure that your home is correctly insulated, that you're getting solar panels, that we're bringing down the carbon emissions from your home? Is that what I'm hoping you're about to say to me? That's what we're going to suggest. We're going to ring fence some money and we're going to go out with Harewood Ward councillors to make sure that's happening.
So when we've been promoting the scheme, we have been targeting the areas of the city that have the most inefficient properties and are most likely to be suitable for the scheme. We've also sent letters to every home where we can see we've got EPC data to say these are the least energy efficient properties. We've also, I myself have been to Wetherby Eco Fair to try and engage residents in these areas. And we've also reached out to every member as well to ask for help promoting it. So we're trying to use a range of channels because it is a very targeted audience that we're trying to reach and engage with, and there's a very short time window for them to engage with it and get the work done, but it is being done in a targeted way. And actually, some of your own communities probably have a lot of eligible residents, for many reasons, one of which is there are lots of different profiles of people that would be eligible, including potentially older people that are retired, but who own their own home and would be able to benefit. So we really want to push it out to those people. And yeah, I think that's a good point to make, Councillor.
You can help me out because I'll then pause. I know others want to come in and ask questions. So of that scheme that's available to date, how much money has been spent of the grant and how much is left? And so I'm clear, if you were a pensioner living in a £2 million home on Ling Lane, you could access this because your income is not above that £30,000 because you would be on a fixed income. It would be lower from your state pension.
There is no maximum asset value in order to qualify for the scheme. It is only based on energy efficiency and income. So yes, it's a simple answer, assuming it met those other criteria, as well as also being technically feasible for us to install the work. So it's the other important point to make. But for that, we just say call us and we'll figure that out. In terms of the statistics for the scheme, the latest I've got was, which is slightly odd now, we have improved more than 150 homes, and we've had applications for at least 500 as well. But there's a bit of processing that goes through in order to get that work done. So, but I don't have the pound expenditure. I'm afraid not available.
Perhaps you could provide that.
I can
to
provide
us
that.
in a
Yeah,
written
that's
form.
absolutely
Thank
fine.
you. Councillor Stevenson, final question, please.
Yeah, it's two questions, I'm afraid, Chair. On the last point that you made there about targeting the importance of it, I agree. So presumably then, based on the data of targeting into the areas that are most polluting, when you provide us with the list of successful applications per ward, can you confirm that there won't be any on that list that come from an area that's least polluting? Because I would expect, therefore, to see them on the most polluting areas of the city first. And secondly, by way of, if you give permission, Chair, for a bit of audience participation, there are two representatives of parish councils in the room tonight from my ward. So given all the effort you've put in, Chad, to getting the message out, could I just ask by way of a yes or no, have either parish councils heard of this scheme to put solar panels on the poorest houses in your parishes?
I think so.
Thank you.
Chad, if you want to just skip to the next part of your presentation, which is the transport bit, which will probably generate quite a few questions as well.
Okay. I've done that slide already. Chair, you had asked for any local data that could be shared on air quality. So I have spoken with our environmental health colleagues that run the monitoring, and they've been able to share the figures you can see.
Yeah.
It should be noted that these are provisional data, and that they're only based on 8 months. And so you would expect to see a slight uptick over the winter period. So it will go up slightly more. However, And these are all although the map doesn't include everything, this is all the data for these 3 wards. However, they're well under the 40 milligram annual limit. However, obviously we recognise that there's no safe levels of air pollution, and which is why we're trying to do what we can to reduce it. I should also make the committee aware that we are still giving out free anti-idling banners to schools that request it. And actually, I've recently been in conversation with St Paul's Primary, who should be receiving one shortly. Was there any more questions on the air quality?
I think Councillor Lamb has a question, but could you provide a new banner to Cross the Street Primary School, please? Because theirs blew away in the wind. Thank you.
Yeah, we just ask if both of the maps that were provided could be redone and sent to us so we can see the whole of the Wetherby ward, please.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So I can end on this slide to keep things brief, because I'm conscious there's been lots of questions. But in terms of 5 ways that this committee and members on the committee can support some of the work that we're doing, we're really grateful for any support you can help in promoting that free insulation and solar panel offer. We also currently have an electric bike trial scheme, which is still open to applications, whereby any resident that takes regular journeys 3 times a week, whether that's to work, to volunteering, or for another reason, can borrow an electric bike for up to a month to see if it can help, you know, them switch a journey that would have otherwise been done by car. We are also going to be beginning work to engage landowners and farmers on promoting the White Rose Forests. I know Councillor Robinson, you've been very involved already with that. So this is just a heads up that as soon as the comms for that are ready, would really appreciate any help in promoting that. And finally, we have a monthly newsletter as well, which kind of talks about all the updates for climate activity that the council and other organisations and third parties that are leading on in Leeds. So please let us know if you'd like to subscribe to that. And then finally, I know I've said that already, we also promise to promote that there's pilots for community climate action training run by Leeds DEC. So if that's of interest as well, please make us aware.
Thank you, Chad. There are just 2 questions that members of the public had submitted because they couldn't be here.
Yes.
One of them was, how are you planning to assist those living in houses with no off-street parking to charge their electric vehicles? And then the other one was, interested to know what the City Council's views are on the placing of recycled plastic benches instead of hardwood public benches, as this is creating a lively debate within our parish council.
Yep, so I'll take the electric vehicle charging question first, if that's okay, Chair. So just to provide a bit of context of the background of what we are doing on electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging more generally, we have expanded public electric vehicle charge point infrastructure across the city, and we're working hard to keep doing that, and there are now more than 150 across the city. Since 2019, planning policies have also required all private developers who are introducing new parking spaces to add electric vehicle charging infrastructure as well. And we know from the planning data that there are thousands of new charge points that way as well. In terms of on-street charging, it is still something that's under review because there are difficulties to consider in terms of other highways users of the pavements. And so we are still exploring options for providing on-street charging, whilst also considering the needs of pedestrians, cyclists, wheelchair users, etc. We are also working with kind of innovative partnerships in terms of testing new technologies such as wireless charging, and looking at for future opportunities for on-street parking through government schemes. And it's an area that we are actively reviewing the policy of, and there has been government consultations that we've recently submitted to, and members have been briefed and given the opportunity to contribute to as part of the SEAC Transport Behaviour Change Working Group. And I would just finally say on that as well is that Leeds is seeing a rapid acceleration in the number of electric vehicles being used in the district, and I think that's something of a success story. So the graph on that you can see pictured is the number of this is the Department for Transport data, and shows the number of electric vehicles that have been registered over the last kind of decade in Leeds, compared to a few other cities that we frequently get compared to. So I hope that is of interest. With regards to the open forum question about benches, we can comment from the sustainability perspective, which is what we've been asked to comment on. And the key point I'd make on this is that when considering the most sustainable option, it's really important to consider the whole life costs of carbon for something. Because in addition to the carbon footprint from raw materials, you also have to consider the energy that goes into making something, installing it, and maintaining that product, that item, such as a bench. In terms of different materials that were mentioned, recycled plastic can be a relatively sustainable option. Apologies, I couldn't find the mute button, but I don't need the presentation anymore. So that should have fixed it. As I was saying, recycled plastic is considered a sustainable option in that it is using a waste product to make a material. So it's effectively near zero carbon, but wood can also be treated as a sustainable option as well. It sequesters carbon and you are locking that away, but it is important to make sure that wood is sustainably sourced. So the key point I would stress in response to the question is, I think the most important point to make in terms of the carbon footprint of choosing different benches is to consider the long-term durability of whatever solution is being considered, in terms of how long it will last, how it is maintained, because a long-lasting bench of whatever material of those mentioned would probably be the most sustainable option in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb, for a final question.
I'm not making any guarantees on that, Chair. So, well, I was hoping we would still have the presentation up, because I was hoping you could bring up the public transport slide and possibly zoom in on it, because it's not terribly clear on here.
I'm happy to go over extra slides. Just conscious of time, so it's up to the chair.
Councillor Lamb, what's the question relating to the slide?
Well, we're on the public transport slide. So what I wanted to do was highlight in this meeting, as we're asked to note the contents of the report. So I would like to note that on the core public transport network for Leeds, in a presentation which showed us that the outer northeast has got the worst areas of climate, following from Councillor Cohen's point, that the bus network stops pretty much where the outer northeast starts, and kind of highlights the problem. And again, if I'm sorry you're the one that's here, but I've got more frustrated as this has gone on, and it feels like it's just a token. We have to go to all community committees, so we'll turn up at the outer northeast. I think the presentation is really poor, and I'd like things would go away and have a better effort and send us one. When you can't even get half our ward on, that's really not good enough. And it feels to me that the climate emergency only matters to the council in some parts of the city and not in ours. And actually, Chair, what I'd like to do is not only note the contents of the report, I'd like us to write as a committee to the Chief Officer, the Director and the Executive Member, and ask that they come to our next community committee meeting and present a proper presentation to us that includes all of our ward and explains why the climate emergency and transport don't matter to the outer northeast, because it certainly matters to all of us. And the impression I get from this and the token stuff that we've been given is that it doesn't matter to this council and the administration.
Councillor Robinson, you had a question.
I did. Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'll take some of those anti-idling banners from you and I'll get in touch with you and make sure we get that sorted afterwards. I've been in touch with the department about the solar panels on schools and the air source heat pumps and others, and I've already expressed to the department that we would be keen to see that rolled out across all the schools in the Harewood ward, and we'll do what we can to help, and whether that is using some of our capital grant to be able to do that, if that helps bridge the gaps for the schools, we're keen to do that. But I'm mindful that we don't have lots of council properties or council land in the Harewood ward, but we do have other public facilities such as village halls that are in the different wards, in the different parishes that we cover. Does the Salix funding extend, and would the scheme extend on insulation, solar panels, air source pumps to those facilities? And could we have a presentation for the outer northeast to look at how we can take that forward with those different community groups?
Mr. Stevenson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was a procedural question, really, following Councillor Lamb's point, in that presumably as a committee, we can vote not to note the contents of the presentation, given its lack of content for us. So we could amend that resolution and send it back with a reason, with requests to come back as Councillor Lamb noted. So with that respect, if there's a second, I'd probably move that we vote not to note the contents for that reason.
Councillor Buckley.
Does that, I wanted to make a comment, which is in the comment or question. Can I do that now? It was just to say that obviously the discussion has been about climate change and lowering emissions and about public transport. And just to place on record a comment that most people might be aware of, but a few might not be. And that is that if we all recall, several years ago, then Councillor Blake had an agreement with First Bus, and it was a gentleman's agreement. There was no contract, but it was an agreement. And the agreement was that under the LP tip scheme, the city would provide all the infrastructure to facilitate the passage of new buses. That was our bit, and we're doing it. And on the other side, First Bus, for example, we're going to provide 284 Euro 6 buses. And in fact, they've only supplied about 170. And when I asked the managing director why this was, he said, because we've got no money, which I understand. But I think just to place that on record, this is the situation, and that must have an effect on the discussions, but it's not in here.
Councillor Cohen.
So thank you, Chair. Really, it's just in relation to this transport summary. I hope when information comes back to us and detail comes back to us, when we're talking about the ambition to get more journeys by public transport, the strategy for how we are going to ensure that the outer areas get a vastly improved service will be very robustly addressed and set out in a way that's frankly meaningful. The number of times we go to meetings, I was at one on Monday evening, where residents lament that on a weekend, there's no service in the evening, that on a Sunday, there's no service at all, that there's an hourly service for huge chunks of the Old Woodley ward, for example. And when that misses, as quite frequently it does, obviously it becomes a 2-hourly service, which is neither use nor ornaments. You know, there needs to be a strategy that is clear, that is simple, that we can then make, that we can help roll out as to how we are going to, as a council, going to be able to encourage people to make more journeys by public transport, if that's our ambition. And nothing here seems to go anywhere towards that. In fact, as Councillor Lamb says, you kind of cut off at us, which is really frustrating.
Thanks, Chair.
Right, so on the basis of Councillor Stevenson's proposal and Councillor Cohen's seconding that we don't accept noting that report, can I have a vote, please? So those supporting Councillor Stevenson's
Stefan,
proposal.
will the report say why? Will the minutes say why? They will. We won't just say we didn't like it. It will say the following points were raised. Thank you.
We reject it and ask them to come back to give us extra information. That was so actually voting to summon them to the next meeting with a motion.
Thank you, Chad. So agenda item number 10 is Highways Winter Service Update. Jeremy, I understand that you're presenting on this, and I think Ben was originally going to be coming, but he's not. So over to you. Can I ask that we maybe members ask questions at the end, make a note of them, and then at least let Jeremy finish what he's saying, and then we can probably get through it in a slightly more timely manner. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you very much, Shane. Thank you, everybody, for having me here this evening today. Luckily, Preet's going to be presenting my presentation for me because my laptop is not compatible with the systems we've got here at the Civic Hall. So thanks a lot for that, Preet. First of all, I'll start really that I'm here to really demonstrate or talk to you about the winter tracker that we've recently launched. It's where residents of Leeds are able to track and gain information from Leeds City Council's website about treatments to their roads in their specific areas. One of them being able to track local gritters to see where they've been and if their roads have been gritted within a certain time period. And I'll come on to that later. I'm not from the operational side. Unfortunately, my colleague Ben, who is, his wife's actually in labour at the moment. So it's about the only excuse that you can give that's actually plausible. And we couldn't get anybody at such short notice. He had to sort of dash off. So apologies. So any operational questions I'll try and deal with, but I may have to take them back to my colleagues who are more in the know than I am. So, but first of all, I'll just give you a few highlight headline things about the winter service that we provide. If you could go on to the next slide. Oh, thanks a lot, Preet. Well, first of all, Leeds City Council has main three duties under the Highways Act, and that's gritting of roads, refilling of salt bins, and snow ploughing and snow clearing. And we do that really above and beyond what is the statutory regulations. So we far exceed those. If you go on to the next slide, so just a little bit of context, a bit of background about what we actually do. Our gritters drive on average 51,200 miles around the city each winter period, which equates to driving around the circumference of the Earth twice. I suppose that might fly in the face of the carbon discussion that we've just had, but it's a necessary evil. And if you're thinking about it, and yes, we are looking at different mechanisms of propelling those vehicles, such as electric ones, and it's not really my expertise, but some sort of carbon neutral vehicles that we might be looking at in the future to do that. In terms of salt, we use between 12,800 and 16,000 tons of salt a year to grit our roads. And that is an average, is that. And just to put a bit of context on it, people often think that last year, I thought in my mind that it was quite a mild winter. It wasn't so bad. We didn't have that much ice and snow, but in fact, we used just as much snow and grit last year as we used the year where we had the beast from the east. So it just shows you how we can get these misconceptions that we've had a good or a poor winter. And we do the gritting. I'll come on to it in quite a scientific way, how we send our gritters. If you just want to go on to the next slide, Preet. We do have different categories of roads. This is probably of particular interest to most of you. Obviously, we do the main roads first. Those are ones that are the main infrastructure things, such as leading to hospital, main roads leading to towns and cities. Then we have other routes where there's bus routes, school links and so on. And then there's a third category, well, it's a category 2. And those are to schools and shopping areas. And then a category 3, and that's a non-primary salting network, which is probably what you're more interested in than anything. And that's great that with regards to sort of your local residents, streets and areas, which in all honesty and hands in the air, we don't really do that unless we have the capacity. They do put in a lot of hours to the drivers. If they're finished their route, they will go and do some of the local networks and some of the smaller streets if their vehicles are able to go up and down there. But in all honesty, we don't do the local ones where most of your constituents will probably say, why isn't my road being gritted? And if you go on to the next slide, Preet, it's a good segue into the next slide. Because if we did grit every road in Leeds, including all those streets. I mean, I'm a North Leeds resident as well, and my street doesn't get gritted, and it's really difficult. I can't get out of it literally. And if we did grit streets such as mine and such as yours, if yours ain't gritted, it means that we'd have to grit throughout the year, including June and July, with the resources that we have got. So obviously, we're not going to go out gritting in June. It'd look a bit silly, spreading grit when it's really sunny out there. But here we've put a little flow chart together that we're going to send out. We're going to hopefully put that on our web pages, our social media and so on. And and I can email it out to you as well. It's a bit of a sort of a guide to which roads are gritted and which aren't. And it's a flow chart that a resident could probably follow and get a bit of rationale as to why their street is or is not being gritted, which we hope that you'll find that bit of that useful information, and that can be emailed out to your constituents. And as I say, I can share that after the meeting to you all. If you want to go on to the next slide, please. As I alluded to earlier, we don't just sort of stick his finger in the air and say, blimey, it's a bit chilly tonight, let's send out the gritters, because it costs us over £10,000 per gritting session. So it's a lot of money. We've got to be really mindful of resources, but we do have to be sure that we are gritting the right roads at the right time. So we do have quite a number of sophisticated methods. We work with a lot of forecasting companies to tell us ambient road temperatures and so on. We have got a couple of weather stations in Leeds that tell us ambient road temperatures. We don't have them at the moment. We don't have the sophistication to be able to check every single road, but we just get a good idea of whether there's going to be a frost in most areas of Leeds. And if there is, we will send the gritters out. If you can just go on to the next slide, Preet. I alluded to earlier about the gritter tracker, which is really what I'm here for today. Really, we have developed a tracker. It's where that residents can click onto our website and they can track a gritter to say, oh yeah, there's a gritter at the moment. Yeah, he's coming up Airwood Road, so on, or he's going through Bramhope or Otley and so on, and they can track that, and it will also show the resident if where he's gritted. What his route that is going on, and any sort of grits that have subsequently happened in the last 48 hours. So it's quite a good indication to give that person to say, oh yeah, the roads have been gritted. I will make that journey now. I will nick to Morrison's to get me a pint of milk, or no, I won't. The roads are likely to be slippy, and so on. So if you could just go on to the next slide, Preet, and if you click on the link, this is just a demonstration of what residents will see when they log on to the site. I must say though, and again, hands up, we are in the very early stages of development of this, and it is open to comments, which is why we're coming to the committee. We want your comments as to say, yeah, that's good, that's bad, that's indifferent. Oh, you know, hopefully you'll think it's great, but it's just, it does take a little bit of time to load, because it's quite a big, right. This is actually the gritty. It takes a time to refresh. I think the Wi-Fi might be a little bit slow in here, but if you could go to that top menu, Preet, the boxes that are stacked on top of each other at the top right in the blue banner, top right hand side, the other way, above, just above a little bit, that white square above, that one, please. Yeah, if you could just click on that. This is the menu. If you could just untick those ticks, please. If you could untick them all, sorry, Preet, untick them apart from the top one. If you just click on the top one, on that top box, brilliant. That's fabulous. That'll should refresh any second. What'll happen there eventually, when the Wi-Fi or it takes up, is you would see those yellow gritters on the map, and it'd show you in real time where they actually are. It's not refreshing here at the moment for whatever reason, but it should be. You can, by zooming in and out of the technology, apologies.
How many gritters have we got?
We've got 30. Yeah, it's quite, it's quite a lot. The gritters, just while Preet refreshes this, thanks Preet, that's looking good. The gritters are dual purpose.
Before I get upset again.
Yes, it does move. If you clicked on it for it to move it about, you can go right up, and if you want to zoom in, because I'll come to that in a minute. In fact, Councillor Lamb, I'll ask for your postcode in a second if you don't mind. Right, just to prove a point. So if you zoomed right out, I'd like to see that there's a few gritters out at the moment, or if not, if it's not at the right temperature, if you could zoom right out so we could see the whole of Leeds. I do apologise, Preet, it's not your fault, is this? I'll zoom in, right in, so yeah. Right in, if you can zoom right in so you can see the whole of Leeds. Sorry, out, that's out, isn't it? Sorry, I'm getting confused now. Yeah. I do apologize about the lag. It is quite a big file to download, and I've got pretty poor internet at home, and it does do it a lot quicker than this normally on mine. But I hope you can get the point. That you would see our gritters out there now if it was refreshing. Yeah, there should be 30 out there if it's cold enough for them to be out. And you'd click that box and you'd see them there, yellow gritters going up a road and refreshing every few minutes, and you'd see them going down. If you can click the next box, Preet, if it works. This shows the areas of Leeds that have been gritted in the last 12 hours. So if they've been gritted in the last 12 hours, that would hopefully tell a resident, oh, yeah, there's grit on that road. It's not going to be icy. It's not going to be iced over. I'll be able to use my car, or I'll be able to walk to the shops without any danger of slipping. And again, it's all about risk and making that informed decision. If you can go to the second to the bottom, the grit bin box, Preet, it's the one at the bottom, that populates the map and shows all grit bins in Leeds. Give people an idea, think, well, I ain't got one on my street, I'd like one, put an application form in, and we do an assessment to see if it requires one. And lastly, as part of the demonstration, it looks to me like on there at the moment, it's not cold enough for the gritters to be out. That's why they're not on the map. And as I say, this is real life and it's happening now. Just unfortunate we could have done with a colder day, really, just to show you that the map. Yeah, I know it was pretty brutal coming in. Councillor Lamb, if I could ask for your postcode, please. There is a postcode search facilities you can see. I hope Councillor Lamb, your address is coming up here now and where you are. And that. What was the address?
What's the opening hours of the Fox?
I'll do. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I can take that back as a request if you want the opening. We can put the opening now as a but that shows you where, obviously where you live, you know where you live, but if you could put the I can't see it on here. If you could put that, if you could click them all, Preet, that'd be great. And then it'll show you if you're on a gritting route, basically, and you're probably not. There you go. That's the gritting route. Nearest to where you are, and that's where a gritter would go. You'd be able to, when the gritters go down, they do leave a trail to say that they have been down, so you can see that it's been down. So you would be able to make that decision. Well, I can't get my car out of my drive or my street, but I can. We were talking about carbon emissions earlier. I can walk to the local bus if there is one in your area and catch the bus and go into town because that road's been gritted. Pardon the pun. So it is giving the members of public a bit more of an informed decision of what we do and sort of like, yeah, I can track the gritters. There is a sense of sort of like interest in that, trying to engage some of the younger people as well to use that as technology. But we do have the usual sort of like source for people that might not be on the internet, that can still phone up and find out real live information and so on if they phone our contact centre, because we do understand that there's a lot of people that don't have the internet. And that's it really. I do apologise the fact that there has been a bit of a lag with it, and I would have liked to show you some gritters actually going down a road, but it's just one of those things. It's like I said, it's not cold enough. They're not out tonight. They were yesterday, but tonight they're not. So that's a quick overview and introduction to the gritter tracker. And I'll take any questions now if anybody's
I think
got any.
Councillor Cohen is first in the queue.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, might I suggest that rather than ask people to try and go through that system, it would be much easier if it was encapsulated within an app, which would be far easier. So one of the best apps the council run is Check My Bin Day, and it's dead easy because you just click on, and anyone using a smart to actually navigate. That looks like it's based on the roadwork system essentially, and it's really difficult to navigate through and actually quite user unfriendly. And I think this is a great idea. People will love to see if their roads being gritted. But I think it's really, if we're doing it and we're calling it a tracker, this isn't really a tracker. This is technology that's pretty much already there that you've been able to get for some time. We've just created the overlays for people to be able to access it. But actually it could be encapsulated within a standalone app really easily. So that's observation one. Number two, you said somebody can look at this and decide whether to walk to Morrison's to buy their pint of milk or not. Of course, we don't grit the pavements. And actually, I'd be quite anxious that somebody look at that and go, the pavements have been gritted, as a takeaway from what you've said. Of course, it may be that the road is beautifully clear, but actually the pavement is a sheet of black ice. Because as a city, we don't grit outside of the parts of the city centre, unless some of the towns, I think some of the towns might actually do some pavement gritting, but generally we don't grit pavements, I don't believe. And then number three, you talked about the actual grit bins. I just want to, first of all, note thanks to Ben and the team, because this year, we put in another mammoth order of blue grit bins for all Woodley residents, something like, we already had an absolute ton, but last year's snow showed that we had a bit of a gap. We ordered 25 grit bins and Ben made sure they were all installed. And in fact, one that I might have said was supposed to go one place and the wrong place, he moved twice for me. So huge appreciation for that, and apologies for giving the wrong location. But really it was appreciated that they were all filled and ready for the poor weather. But one of the things you said was that people can apply for grit bins. I just want to semi-correct that, because the council's criteria for grit bins is nigh on impossible for anybody that doesn't live in the footslopes of Everest. To get the council to provide a grit bin, I think in 10 years I've known the council agreed to one. I'm sure it's true for colleagues too. Almost all the grit bins in our areas are those that the councillors have managed to fund from the very, very limited funding we have, fill from the very, very limited funding we have. And it would be wonderful if the council were to take on that responsibility, because within all Woodley, it costs us around £10,000 a year just in salt provision. That's more than a third of our funding in grit bins and making sure that we can fill them and have enough salt funding to do at least 1 or 2 refills over the year. And if the city is really serious about keeping people moving, that's something that really could and should be looked at. That's not within your remit, but I think as we're talking about it, it's an important thing to note. Thank you so much, Chair.
I have Matthew Robinson wants to ask a question.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you, Jeremy, and congratulations to Ben and his wife. I should think we should note that as well. Like Councillor Cohen, I welcome this because I think moving this to some sort of app function, especially where you can overlay it with other data that the council's using, will mean much more interoperability, but it means much more easy information access for residents. What I'm really interested in is when the data gets shared and how you're sharing that data. So when the downloads come in and the drops of that data, because I think that will make for interesting reading in terms of how we find efficiencies in the routes, how we know where we're prioritizing and when, and making sure that we are looking to consistently improve. Actually, from a smart city perspective, there's so much more that I think we could be doing with this as well, looking at the state of the highways as well. When we're out there, I know other cities are doing this. They're using 5G functionality to actually assess the state of the highway while they're going out doing this, whether that is on buses or whether it's on gritters. And I think that's something that's going to be really useful. Question, which is the grit bins, the dots that are on the map. How often do they get updated? If Councillor Cohen's sticking 25 in a year every year, this map's and all the other colleagues, I think that it'd be interesting to know how the map gets updated, and presumably that is taken from the Z order as well that goes in, and or the council's existing information. And finally, there was a policy a few years ago, going back to when Russell Martin was here, where we'd actually, in some really terrible winters, given grit to farmers because some of the farm vehicles were the only ones that were going to be able to get through. And it meant it eased the pressure on the council's service, particularly at a time when we had a lot of officers who were trying to cover a lot of mileage in a very, very short space of time. Is there anything that can be done for more rural areas to bring that into place so that we can actually work with our farmers, making sure we're keeping some more of the rural roads open as well? Thank you.
Thank you, councillors, for your questions, and they are all really valid points. And I actually, I completely agree with most of them, to be honest. The thing about the app and the technology side of it, and I completely take that on board. And what we're doing here, sort of a sense of justification, is a bit of a starter for 10 is this, and we are dealing with what technology we have at the moment. And the platform that LCC uses, it doesn't lend us to be able to do anything a bit more sort of like Xbox 360 or PlayStation sort of graphics and that sort of thing, and put it on the app at the moment. But we are working on that, and we hope to have that sort of tweaked in the very, very near future. I don't have an exact time scale of when that'll be doing, but I know as a start for 10, we have got meetings planned with our IT to start discussing this in the new year. And I think you're right. We do need an app. I mean, although you can access this from an app, it's still the same cumbersome system that it is. And it, again, I completely agree. It's not the best in the world, and not most of them user friendly. And we're just doing the best with the tools that we've got, and we will be improving on that. In terms of the grit bins and the locations, not all the blue bins, if I'm honest, are mapped on there. All our yellow ones are, because we do have strong data, and we do know where all our yellow ones are on the presentations you saw today, and not necessarily have all the blue bins on. And we are hoping to include those. I checked it today, and the blue bin outside my house is on, but we are going through them. And as I say, it's early data, and we're still inputting the information. I live in Bramhope, so it's the excuse me. So I am aware of the sort of the weather conditions that we do face in that area of Leeds. We seem to have a different sort of the climate, and it seems to be colder than in, say, South Leeds. Okay, well, sorry, I did, Councillor Cohen, when I did talk about somebody popping out for a pint of milk, did I say walk? I meant to say drive. If you pop out, obviously we don't grit the paths. Some cycleways we do grit, the major cycle routes into Leeds, but we don't grit paths as a rule. We do in the city centre if we do have the facilities to do it. But yeah, I stand corrected on that one. I should have said drive. So pop out in your car to Morrison's. There shouldn't be any ice on the road if the critter's been out on there. So apologies for that one. And about I think Councillor Robinson about using the grit, about using farmers. This is why we're here, to get your comments. I think that's a great idea. Why, and it would probably help farmers with their income in probably when they're not able to farm in inclement weathers. I think that's, you know, something I'll take back. I think that's fantastic. I do know that some parish councils in the city do, and I'm not suggesting you do this at all, but I think it's the outer south, Morley, Gildersome areas. I think they may privately employ some farmers to do some gritting of roads in some of the more residential areas that we don't do on the main infrastructure routes, and which has proved quite very, very popular. But I think that's a good idea, and I'm sure these farmers out there, they'd be interested in doing that type of work if we could probably coordinate something and put something together. And I'll certainly take that back to my senior management team. And yeah, thanks for that.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, Jeremy, and thanks for standing in at the last minute.
Oh.
And if you pass on our congratulations to Ben, that would be lovely.
I will do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so agenda item number 11 is the Outer North East Community Committee Finance Report, which you will all have read. So, Preet, would you like to go through the things that you need a decision on, please?
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 funding applications in terms of getting approval. 2 are wellbeing, 1's youth activity. I will go through the wellbeing first. The first one is various communities group. The amount applied for is just under 4,000 and it's for the Orwoodley group. Do we approve? Super. The second wellbeing is part of the supplementary, which is the Thorner Pollinators and Information Board. It's coming at £1,715. Do we agree? Sorry? And the final funding application is youth activity. This is again for the Harewood ward. It's for the bouldering wall at £800. Thank you.
Okay, so and then item 12 is the Outer North East Community Committee's update report. Preet, if there's anything that you specifically want to draw our attention to, that's fine. And then if there are any questions from members for Preet, we'll take those. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The only things that I want to sort of draw attention to are the sort of main headlines from pages 39 to 44. Just want to draw attention to Wycridge in Bloom. I won't go through each point or each paragraph. Pollinators project in Thorner, recycling on the go in Wetherby, Leeds Festival working group. And then on page 44, Collingham Local Centres Programme. Thank you.
On the issue of the Leeds Festival Working Group, the expectation is that there will be some feedback at a future community committee meeting, which will probably be February. Yeah. I don't know, is it March? No, it's March. So it would be the March meeting. Yeah, okay. I know there are several residents that are interested to know what's going on with that. So we will bring a report to that meeting. Thank you. So, yeah.
Just seeking some points of clarity. I think it's page 49 under Housing Advisory Panel. Item 71, agenda item 71. It says about the Blackwood House, Darkwood Way, Shadwell, and then it says Harewood. Best as I know, that's not Harewood. Yeah, and similarly, Sandringham Drive, Shadwell will be is all Woodley, it's not Harewood. I'm just mindful of that from what's recorded in the Housing Advisory Panel and what might come forward, just making sure that that's clear on the papers. Within there at 77, the digital drop-ins that I mentioned at the beginning, and making sure we get that information from the library service, because I'm keen that we roll that out, and we have talked about rolling that out in Skulls and what we can take forward. And finally, it's page 45, item 42. It talks about CMT doing works when with part of the Leeds Orbital Road closures. I think there should be thanks noted to the team who were working nights out there trying to clear some of this out. The job isn't done, and actually, as we found out, we're having a change of personnel at the moment, and I think it's incredibly important that as ward councillors across all 3 wards, we speak with one voice and make sure we get the right person appointed. I'm still not happy with the programme of street sweeping, street cleansing and what's taking place. And while great strides have been made by Baz, I think we need to be much clearer from officers and the data that they're sharing with us as well on this. Thank you.
I'm afraid I don't know which officers are changing. Is that public information? Don't tell me if it isn't.
I think it is, yeah. But I think Baz is going.
And I think Councillor Richards, although she's given her apologies, has asked that we note at this meeting, Wetherby Ward in particular, thanks for the work that Baz has done, because he has worked incredibly hard to redress some of the issues that we had in our area. So I'd like to formally note that.
Chair, if we could certainly from All Woodley add our comments to that too. I wouldn't deign to speak for Harewood, but
we feel guilt tripped into we
So I guess it would be proportionate for me to write to Baz and thank him for the service that he has provided in the short period of time that he was with us. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Okay. So,
sorry, Chair, can I just mention, I'm just going to pass this over to Alison, because I think she's got an update for us in regards to a new member of team joining us.
Thanks, Pri. It was just to say that the minutes of the last meeting noted that Grace Young had moved on to a new position and that Patrick Mulcahy is the new engagement officer for this community committee going forward. So we'll welcome him to future meetings. Thank you.
yes, Nick.
Yeah, just briefly, Chair, on page 43, Town and Parish Council Forum. And I just wonder whether my colleagues have got more parishes than we have in All Woodley, because we only have one and they have lots of them. 2, yes, Councillor Cohen corrects me, we have got 2. But I think it's just worth saying that the agenda at the last one or maybe 2 has been pretty thin. And it just struck me that perhaps we ought to ask the parishes what they want on the agenda rather than just imposing one on them.
So if parish council chairs want to get in touch, then we can see what we can do about getting it on the agenda. I know we have got a couple of parish councillors here tonight.
sorry, Chair, might it be something that Pri could perhaps write out rather than wait for them to contact us, that we could actually go out and speak to them and give us topics that they would like including in the coming municipal year?
Any further questions on that report? Oh, okay, so the item on the agenda number 13 is a request to consider the establishment of a working group to coordinate local celebrations for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Councillor Stevenson, would you like to talk to that?
Yeah, I'll be brief. Thank you, Chair. I'm hoping that we'll all be mask-free and allowed to circulate by next June, I think it is. So with that in mind, I think it's appropriate that we start preparing across our areas for various celebrations. And I know some villages will already be doing so, but I think it's important we can maybe pull those together and use our various public offices to bring on board people like the West Yorkshire Lieutenancy, etc., to help us along with that. So the proposal would be, if you want to do it on a outer northeast basis, which I think would be quite nice, because things like, for example, beacon lighting, we could do across the whole area rather than just a ward or a town. And we can maybe try and pull those things together in preparations for Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee.
Are all ward members agreed on that? Yeah, Councillor Lamb. Councillor.
Well, just with, I think it's a good idea. Just being conscious that Wetherby, as an example, has got very, very well advanced plans already and substantial. And it's just making sure we're not sort of trying to take over what the good work's already been done, but we're making it even better and helping and supporting rather than.
I think
Yeah, I guess it's coordination of it, which is something similar to what we did with the work with the pandemic last year, that we actually hold a working group that would coordinate some of those issues. Yeah, so again, we can write out to, once we've got that working group set up, you can actually write out to parish councils and other village groups and see what they're actually going to be planning on doing and how we can assist. Yeah, okay, thank you. So you'd need to have thoughts for each ward. Would have to suggest a member to attend that meeting.
Perhaps particularly Harewood, because I mean they're related, aren't they? The people who own Harewood are actually it's his
first cousin, I think.
First cousin, is it? Well,
yeah.
They should contribute.
I might be able to get you an introduction so you
I'm
can
busy that
explain
day.
your deference.
When is it?
So we have Councillor Harron, who's volunteered for Alwoodley, and one of either you, is it you, Ryan, that's going to be doing it from?
No, I
Yeah,
resigned,
okay.
Chair.
Okay, yeah, you resigned. Yeah, all right. Okay, and we'll let you know who it's going to be from Wetherby. Okay, thank you very much. So the final agenda item is the date and time of the next meeting. Now, Preet has been working extremely hard trying to figure out, with parish council meetings and various other meetings that ward members have to attend. So we're looking at March, and there are a couple of proposed dates which are the best as far as parish council meetings go, and that is Thursday the 17th of March or Tuesday the 22nd. So can we please have a look at diaries and see which ones you think would be best? Okay. So shall we look at the 22nd?
If I may, Chair, just
Yeah.
a delicate reminder that the 23rd is full council, which is not a problem for me.
It's not. Is that a reason why I didn't add that on? Right, okay, yeah. Okay.
Chair, is there a reason why, I mean, it's obviously commitment of councillors, but why we couldn't do it in the morning before full council whilst we're all here?
I haven't got a problem with that. Is it going to be all right for yourselves, John and Preet, and
If I may,
facilitate?
I would need to pop out at some point of that because
you've
I
got-
have whips.
Yeah.
And obviously would want to make sure I was here representing the good folk of Alwoodley, notwithstanding the fact both my colleagues would, I'm sure, be here.
Okay. So the 17th, who was it that said they couldn't do the 17th?
It's not a problem though. It's
So is the 17th better for everybody then, the majority? Yeah. Okay, well, we'll go with the 17th. then.
Dan, the screen looks like some sort of movie where we fall in love, look.
Yeah. Okay, that'll do. So the date of the
Sorry,
next meeting is the
it's the 17th
17th.
to Thursday.
Yeah,
And it's the Thursday before a council meeting. Would that be group?
We could do it straight. We could do it straight after though. Because then most of us would be at group, wouldn't we? So if we can do it here, Preet.
At Civic.
Yeah, on the 17th. Thank you very much, everybody.
Same time, 5:30.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.